All right, fellas, welcome to another edition of Our Two Cents. Join with me are our favorite NHL analysts, Nick McVicar and Jake Bolin Moss. Today, we are going to be talking about everybody's favorite team. That's right, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we got a few topics, as you can probably see at the bottom of the screen. Let's start off with the big pressing issue all season long, and that's the future of Frederik Andersen and Zach Hyman in Toronto. Both have pending contracts and will be potentially heading to free agency by summer of 2021. Nick, I want to start with you. Do you think both these players will be staying in Toronto? Will one be staying or will both be going?
I think they both want to stay, and that's a big thing in today's market is where the players want to go. I think they both like it in Toronto. I think they've created some pretty good bonds with other members of the team that are locked up for years, like Matthews and Tavares and Marner, respectively. So if they had their way, they would probably stay. And I think the Leafs are going to find a way to make it work. So honestly, yeah, I do think they will both be here at the start of next season in some way, shape, or form.
Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Nick said, I think they both want to be here in Toronto. And I think at the same time, Toronto also wants them here. You look in the past, Toronto goalies, Toronto worked so hard to find that number one guy for so long. You look back, Bernier, Reimer, Toskala, Raycroft, like some of the names that were out there that just really never panned out for this team. They finally got their guy in Andersen. To see him go next year would be a big hit. And Hyman, almost just as important, a guy who gives you penalty kill time. He's now working on the power play. He works in the top line right now with Marner and Matthews. He gets in the corners. He does the dirty work. A guy that may not always be on the stat sheet, but is a key piece for that Toronto team. So I think, yeah, they probably want both those guys coming back. And I think, like Nick said, I think both those guys are interested in making their return to the Leafs.
I definitely agree with both of you guys. I think it'd be the most ideal for both of them to stay back. And you're right, both players do want to stay. Speaking of valuable forwards, last week, Elliot Friedman reported that the Leafs are looking at acquiring a winger of some sort. Didn't say exactly who. It's now being labeled as a mystery forward. So speculation has been really rampant in Leafs Nation. So, Jake, who do you think this mystery forward is?
I mean, I think you got to go immediately to who's in the trade talks, right? So maybe a guy like Sam Bennett on Calgary right now. He's been in and out of the lineup. He's basically said to the media he wants out of there, right? So former first-round guy. I think he was a 4th overall pick. And a guy that maybe just needs a new scenery to excel. So I think that would be one of the guys I'd look at. I'll let Nick take a guy, and then maybe we can keep going back and forth with some other options.
Yeah, it's funny because if you asked me this last week, my answer actually would have probably been Cedric Paquette from Ottawa, who is now on the move to Carolina. He's not going to be a Matthews, a Tavares, a Marner. He's not going to put up points every game, but he does a little bit of everything. He's a penalty kill guy. He's a power play guy if you need him to be, which they don't. So a guy like Cedric Paquette would have been perfect. He's gone now. So to fill that role, you got to look somewhere else, and you got to look at one of the struggling teams. And I look at Minnesota and I see a Jordan Greenway, big body, interesting player. It'd be hard in this year to maybe pull that deal off just because of the restrictions coming cross border. But if you're looking to make that kind of move and make yourself that much better, picking up a Greenway would be huge for this Leafs team.
Greenway sounds really nice. So does Sam Bennett. I personally think Alex Iafallo would be a pretty cool addition. I know LA's and Toronto have some good trading history, but history is something that the Leafs and the Canadiens have quite a lot of it. And this year is finally maybe the first time these two teams are competitive at the same time. And just at the time of recording this, the Montreal Canadiens just beat the Leafs 2-1 on Saturday night. Let's just go around the room and say, who do you guys still think Montreal is Toronto's biggest threat?
Well, if we're going quiz master, I'm assuming A would be Montreal, B would be Edmonton, and C would be somebody else. I'm going A, just because Montreal has been the most consistent team in that North Division outside of Toronto. When you have a goaltender like Carey Price, you're never out of a game, no matter how young your team actually is. And that's what we've seen from Montreal this year and in the playoffs last year. Don't forget, they were the 12th seed going into the playoffs last year and upset the Pittsburgh Penguins. You don't see that very often from a team being the lowest seed possible going into playoffs, upsetting in the first round. So to see what they were able to do then, carry that momentum forward, they're getting some great contributions from guys like Drouin, Nick Suzuki. They're getting the offense. They need to work on shutting down the defense a little bit more. They've given up a few too many goals for my liking, but if they can shore that up, they're the obvious contender for the Leafs at the top of this division.
Yeah, and I think top to bottom, this team is the deepest, I'd say. There's no one really specifically that stands out as their number one guy, as the Leafs have, like in a Matthews or a Tavares or even a Marner for that matter. But I think when you look at them, guys that they picked up, like Toffoli, Josh Andersen, even Corey Perry, like he'll contribute to that team. You got young guys like Romanov on the back end. He's been helping that team a lot. I think definitely top to bottom, all four lines can play on that team. They can provide offense for them. They can provide good forechecking. And I think they play a solid system. So I think, Montreal's probably still the number one threat for the Leafs, but we'll see what goes on down the stretch here.
I definitely agree with you guys. Montreal still remains the threat, and these two teams will be facing off against each other 7 more times. Well, I'd love to keep this conversation going, but we ran out of time. Thank you, Jake and Nick, for taking the time to talk to me about your Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll see you guys next week. Let's go back to the studio.